everybody. This is our last edition of Let's Do Lunch before we take a little break for a summer vacation, and then we'll be back. I don't know if we have the exact date yet, but I think it's early August that we'll be back with more segments of Let's Do Lunch to continue season 2. As I say at the beginning of every show, we'd love to know who's in the room today. So please go to the chat on the bottom nav and introduce yourself. When you do that, select the drop down to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your introductions and not just the panel. If you have questions for our speakers today, it's really helpful if you can put them in the Q&A, which is just to the left of the chat, so that it's easy to get to them throughout the show. Our show runs just about 45 minutes, and we have a great topic today. And of course, Paul Sweeting is here, CEO of Concurrent Media and co-founder of the Rights Tech Project. Paul, welcome. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Great to have you.
Thanks, Ned.
Right.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. As Ned said, that we have what I think will be a very interesting discussion lined up today. Ned also, I think, mentioned that this will be the last Do Lunch for a couple of weeks. We'll be back in early August. Meanwhile, summer reruns are available at rightstech.com/video, where you'll find recordings of all of our past episodes. Again, welcome everyone. Before we get to the discussion today, the usual couple of headlines that I just wanted to flag. One, a very interesting development this week. It's somewhat arcane and wonky, but this is a somewhat arcane and wonky crowd, so presumably it will be of some interest. The American Law Institute, which is an organization made up of elite, or at least self-proclaimed elite legal scholars, judges, academics, practicing lawyers. And they, from time to time, do what's called restatements of areas of the law, in which they sort of summarize and synthesize a body of law, and they publish this in various volumes, and they're used. They're pretty influential. They're pretty widely used by judges as sort of cliff notes to areas of the law like torts and property law and areas that are predominantly matters of common law, that is judge-made law. But this week, they took a very rare step of restating copyright law, which, as you know, most of you know, in the U.S. at least, is largely governed by statute, so-called black letter law. And this effort was spearheaded by Pamela Samuelson, who some of you may know, who is a very prominent copyright scholar, but a somewhat controversial one in that she has been thought to sort of favor the user side of the equation over the creator or rights owners side of the equation. And most of the folks who were involved in drafting this restatement sort of fell into that camp. There was a lot of controversy around this. A lot of other prominent scholars who were actually formally, they were actual advisors to the project, dissented from what was produced and tried to block its adoption. But it was adopted this week at the ALI annual meeting. So it's yet to be seen how that might affect the way courts treat matters involving copyright and technology, but it is certainly worth, at least for you lawyers out there, certainly worth keeping your eye on. In other news, there are a couple of, the financial aspects of the music business continue to be quite active. Just this week, or perhaps it was late last week, that Reservoir, the New York-based company, acquired the legendary label and publishing company Tommy Boy, which launched the careers of Queen Latifah, Africa Bambaataa, Digital Underground, and many others. That was about $100 million deal, according to the news reports. Also this week, Hypnosis Songs Fund, Mercuriadis's company, released some financial data, including what they said was an independent valuation of their catalog at $2.21 billion US dollars. And that included approximately 65,000 songs that they have acquired over the last few years since they have been actively buying up song rights, publishing rights. And that kind of brings us to the topic of today's conversation. I'd like to invite our guest, Alison Wenham, to join us. Alison has had a, Alison? There we are, okay. Thought we'd lost you there for a second.
No,
Alison is an advisor to a new financial player in the music industry called Music Credit Fund, but she has had a long and very distinguished career in the music business before getting involved with Music Credit Fund. She is the CEO of Worldwide Independent Network, which is a trade association representing independent commercial music sector, and in a leading board of representatives from 18 countries, developing capacity in the commercial and political arenas, promoting and protecting SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises in the music industry, and various other operations. She was also formerly the chairman and CEO of AIM, the Association of Independent Music. Before that, she worked at BMG, at Conifer Records. She's been on the board of directors or advisors of just about every important music organization in the United Kingdom, including PPL, BPI, UK Music, Merlin, Impala, and on and on. She was awarded the Order of British Empire in 2010 for her contributions to the creative industries. She was awarded the Order of Arts and Letters by France in 2014. She's a visiting fellow at Warwick University at the Center for Creative and Cultural Policy, and may very well be the most highly credentialed guest we've ever had on this show.
Mother of two, I'd like to add.
And mother of two, yes. And that was just a summary of her bio, which is really quite impressive.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us, Alison.
I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Paul.
So the Music Credit Fund was established when?
We launched it in April. It's been in gestation for a couple of years. I suppose in my head, I'd like to say that the genesis of this goes back to the beginning of AIM, because when we founded AIM in the United Kingdom in '99, we took a good look at the independent sector. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that when you analyze the issues of the independent sector in one country, you get a remarkable correlation in other countries dealing with the same issues. You know, the independent sector across the world does coalesce quite nicely in terms of, you know, addressing challenges and opportunities that they have around the world. But one of the first things I wanted to look at was access to finance, because obviously, you know, you need money to grow, and you can do it in one of two ways. You can do it organically, or you can go out to a third party. A third party route is often through a distributor or via a major, rarely a bank. I mean, if you could find an independent label boss on the arm of a bank manager, I'd find you a pig that just flew over our meadow. It was as rare as that, that you could actually see the bank, you know, the finance industry, as was then in 1999, engaging with the music industry. So I went to the DCMS, which is the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, and I said, we have a roadblock here, and we're holding back talent, we're holding back commercial opportunity, we're holding back, you know, a great big middle sector of the independents who are motoring along quite nicely. And by the way, I wasn't talking about startup finance. I think there's plenty of grassroots support around. I was talking about companies who had achieved a reasonable market size, had a reasonable place in the industry, but who lacked the ability to fast forward their growth. So we produced a report with the government, and it was called Banking on a Hit. And I mean, it absolutely nailed everything that I thought in terms of lack of what I would call appropriate forms of finance. You know, we knew that people were getting money from family and friends, from credit cards, remortgaging, rarely from banks, rarely from the financial industry. And there we were holding this wonderful report, 2001, Banking on a Hit. And I think in about 2005 or 6, I renamed it Banging On a Bit, because really, frankly, not a lot happened. It didn't move the needle much in terms of stating the case for more investment, stating the case for more.
And were you looking, in doing this for or with the government, were you looking for government financing, or were you just using?
No, only, well, I mean, in other forms of support, we, as an industry in the UK at least, had never approached the government for any form of support, and that's another story for possibly another webinar. But no, I was not looking for the government to finance music companies. I was looking for the government to finance the report, because I wanted the report to be done properly. I wanted it to have good credentials. I wanted it to be, you know, a respected and authoritative comment on the state of the music industry. Now you can come forward to where we are today, and you can see that, you know, investability in the music industry has completely transformed. And if you analyze why that is, I think that it comes down to one very incredibly simple answer. And it's a rather almost tame answer, but it's a change of format. When you move from physical to streaming, you suddenly have an income stream that can be stable, sustainable, and long-term. Right. Whereas in the physical world, as we all know, you have a very short window in which to make some mark in the commercial world with your releases. And you can see the pattern of the sort of accidents that happened going back 20, 30, 40 years, with even the largest companies getting really kicked around the room in the public sector, because the predictability of the industry was too volatile. It just wasn't predictable enough. So here we are today with secure revenue streams, which has finally established without any doubt that we were always a really valuable industry, but now you can measure it, you can weigh it, and you can finance it.
Yeah, I would add only that yes, it was the format shift to and a business model shift to, you know, recurring, ongoing revenue streams. There was also the new way of distributing music throws off an enormous amount of data to to measure exactly what's going on out there in the marketplace. And you know, insofar as the investment potential in music is concerned, that data is highly valuable, because now, you know, it's sort of changed how the industry looks at how value is created.
Yeah.
I mean, in the physical world, you didn't really know, you had no visibility into what, how, and where, and when people were listening to music, and to what music. And one of the things that, you know, that has sort of come out of all of this is that catalog, so-called catalog repertoire, older repertoire, actually generates a lot of plays.
Well, it does. I mean, music has been divorced from its origin, essentially, hasn't it? From its timeline, when it was released, who it was released by, which is a loss in some respects, but it's a gain in other respects, because when people find a song that they like, they're not really interested in when it was released, or who. They probably are interested in the artist, but the date of that release is not particularly relevant to their enjoyment of that release. So, you know, bringing back what is a wealth of catalogue which is owned around the world. And I think we're just at the beginning of this journey, because you mentioned data. I mean, as you well know, there's still a very long journey to be taken before we have pitch perfect data.
Oh gosh,
for everything that goes out into the world. And there's an awful lot of backwash which needs to be cleaned up and got rid of this from the system. But in terms of future growth, I'm not at all surprised about Hipgnosis's valuation. I think that they will see very impressive growth over the years to come. But what our approach is slightly different, because we are not an loan to own product. You know, we believe very strongly that the curation of rights is something which the artists should be invested in themselves. We believe that, you know, looking after those rights, managing those rights, creating those rights, and earning from those rights for the duration of those rights. You know, it's a simplistic thing to say, but people wouldn't be so keen to buy things if they didn't think they were going to increase in value. Well, that's the same for the artist or the writer or the record company or the publisher that currently owns them.
All right, so let's flesh out what your model is a little bit. You're not acquiring rights in the way that Hipgnosis is, and a number of others. You are providing essentially debt financing to artists and to rights owners, secured against the copyrights or against the future revenue streams from those copyrights, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's what you call an asset-backed fund. So, I mean, one of the things which you will not see is us announcing deals every 5 minutes. We are doing very, very well. There are lots and lots of deals going through our pipeline right now, but we believe that we should respect the integrity and the privacy of the borrower, because, you know, it could be commercially insensitive and disadvantageous to put it out there that you're borrowing money, and for what for. I mean, we don't care what for. But you know, this won't be an announcement fund. This will be a business to business fund, and we will be able soon to lend as little as $50,000. We're currently at $2 million. We're doing that simply because our debt fund manager is a company called Gravis, which is one of the best in class for asset managed funds. They manage £3 billion, so they know what they're doing. But they've not worked in the music industry, so we're getting them used to the type of deal flow. So a writer, a record company, an artist, all of those deals are going through the due diligence process, and the learning curve is being climbed. So once we've got it stabilized and settled down and everybody's comfortable with the procedures, then we'll be able to drop the minimum loan down. The term is up to 10 years, so it's a good long term. There are no personal guarantees, which is a huge departure from more traditional forms of lending. Traditional forms of lending, as I call them, i.e. from banks or from, say, a major record company, always come with considerable contractual commitments and obligations. Ours come simply with the ability to pay back, and with the conservative approach that we're taking, it is hugely unlikely that anybody is going to catch a cold with this.
But there's some sort of underwriting process, right, where you're doing some sort of valuation of what those particular assets.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very thorough valuation. And we'll lend up to 50% of the valuation. So we're not trying to, put anybody into a high risk situation with lending, say, up to 90% like you might get with a mortgage. Because we're taking a conservative approach, this is a very sensible and manageable arrangement for lenders and for borrowers to engage with.
And so the folks who are borrowing the money are not actually giving up any control over the
No. And I think there's a very high alignment of interests here between the creative community, who own and control those rights, and the Music Credit Fund, we have a strong belief that those rights should remain with the artist, or with the writer, or with the record company. I mean, obviously, that is a sweeping statement, and it's not for me to say that an artist who may be in his 60s or 70s and has maybe got a complicated back history may just want to sell and be done with it. I mean, that's fine, but if you don't want to sell, then how do you realize value? If you're an owner manager, for example, there are lots and lots of record companies who started in the punk era in the 70s. It's really the birth of the independent sector, and those companies are owner managed today, with owners who don't have a clear exit strategy or ability to realize any lump sum value from the legacy of their catalogue. This way they can do it without any business interruption whatsoever.
So are there any restrictions on what can be done with the borrowed funds? I mean, does it have to be directly related to their music practice, such as it is?
So I was just reading the questions. I think you need
somebody asking that.
I can't multitask. I've just realised I was supposed to be able to multitask being a woman, but I can't read the Q&As and listen to you. So. What did you ask me then?
I was asking whether you place any sort of restrictions on what can be done with the funds that are being loaned. I mean, does it?
No, not at all. I mean, with an artist, it's absolutely up to them if they want to buy a house or a boat, or they want to. We've got that's absolutely.
So it really is sort of a pure asset-based.
Yeah, that's right. With a company, we would be mildly curious, but it wouldn't change the decision. What we want to do is to finance growth in that sector particularly, because I do believe that the independent sector is a little conservative where debt is concerned. Debt sometimes has this stigma of being undesirable, when in fact smart business people tend to use other people's money to finance growth so that they can get more of their own money. It's a pretty simple equation.
It's the best kind of money, other people's money.
Other people's money. So we would certainly not be interrogating people's desire for the funds. I mean, we have a deal just closing next week, and I know that there's some pressure because of a timeline, but I don't know why, and I don't need to know why.
So obviously, the last 18 months since COVID hit
Yeah.
touring shut down, it's put a lot of pressure on artists, and a lot of financial pressure on artists who relied on touring for a big chunk of their income. Obviously, that might have increased their incentive to look for other ways of financing their careers. Do you think? I mean, how do you think that's going to play out now that it appears as if some measure of touring is going to return? Is that going to negatively impact your business, do you think, or?
I don't think so. I mean, in the short term, the Music Credit Fund is obviously a good alternative to selling rights if the reason for so doing is COVID. If the only reason why you need to sell your rights is because you've had a cash flow crisis, you've had a liquidity problem, business interruption because of COVID, then this fund provides a very sensible alternative to get you over the bumps in the road.
Sort of like bridge financing.
Yeah, exactly. And yet not at the same rate. Our interest rate will be around 7.5%, and that's all in. So, it's and we have a arrangement fee of 1.75%, which can be financed from the loan. And as you go around the world, these rates are sometimes a little high in some countries, a little low in other countries. Some countries are used to having arrangement fees. Some countries have double the arrangement fees percentage that we have, but all of it can be financed from the loan. But
and are you making loans all around the world, or is
yes.
Most of your business
it's all around the world? In fact, we have deals coming through from Australia, from America, from Germany, from South Korea, from the UK, obviously, and the US is a conversation that we're having right now with key players there. So, the interest rate will not probably will not be lower than that, but it's very helpful to have such a long term,
right? So
that you can really strategically plan how you're going to use the money over a decent period of time. The 10-year is, I think, unique. I don't think there's many other. I think there's any other.
And you'll lend up to 10 years.
Yes.
Where are most of them falling? Are they falling at the 10-year end of the spectrum?
2 to 3 to 5, absolutely at the outside is what I know. So, the 10 years is really a very comfortable journey in terms of debt repayment and in terms of business planning.
And, the longer the term, the more the potential for upside for.
That's right. I mean, for the first 2 years, there's no capital repayment, so you're simply paying the interest. If you look at the market, the market is both global and local. The market, both in terms of organic growth for countries coming on stream, India, China, Middle East, etc., will only increase revenues. But as you alluded to earlier, 2 other factors will increase value in the music industry. One is the data, data cleansing, which will improve income right through the pipeline. It will hopefully over time eradicate the black box so that there should be no such thing as an unidentifiable use. And then the other thing that you also alluded to
from your lips to God's ears on that.
I hope so. Hello. Is a very robust, and I would say now I could say with some confidence, global copyright regimes. If you look at China, 20 years ago, the music industry was to be found in the markets and on the streets. Right. It was all bootleg, and the government left it quite comfortably like that because in the black economy, it was making more from that activity than from acknowledging that copyright as an economic engine was more valuable to legitimize. Now you have China, you have India, you have other parts of the world where the copyright regime is now robust. So that can only increase. You've got Article 17, you've got the European Copyright Directive, which is enforcing proper licensing procedures between platforms and copyright owners. So, you know, there's only one way, and that's up right now for a considerable time, no doubt.
Though there's been some delay in the transposition of the copyright directive from what I've been reading to.
I think Hungary, Germany,
and the Netherlands.
And the Netherlands, that's
yeah.
right.
Other countries, France partly, but not
France
fully.
is partly there, yeah. Yeah.
But there have been delays
yeah,
and controversy around it. And of course, the UK is not implementing the directive, although.
Can I ask you not to remind me of that? No, thank you very much.
I shouldn't bring up the B word, Brexit.
Well, what we don't want are copyright silos. I mean, that's one of the great concerns about not having a harmonized European copyright implementation, is that you could get silos around Europe. Yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out.
And so the other thing I think adds to the future upside is there are many more users of licensees of music these days. You look at what's happened in the fitness business and in the and in the game industry, it's just exploding.
It is, and also, Paul, what we put. I was on the PPL board for 25 years, so I've had a very, very long involvement with neighbouring rights, as we call them, ancillary rights from public performance and broadcast. And we did predict in the noughties that we would see an attrition in traditional revenues from commercial radio. And in fact, that hasn't happened. So although we've had a proliferation of uses, we have not seen a diminution of revenue from what you would perhaps call traditional uses. Commercial radio is still as popular as it ever was. And then you have, the occasional uses. You have, there's so many ways you can see music being embedded, because music is a key driver for commerce from all sorts of
music draws a crowd, and
music draws a crowd.
Everybody needs a crowd.
Music creates football, as we used to say. I mean, it's the old when you used to go into a big department store. The first thing you would see on the way in was a Disney display, and the reason it was there was because it created footfall. Music's the same.
Yeah. The big stores used to use DVDs in the same way. They would put Disney DVDs out front and draw a crowd, and you can always monetize a crowd if you know what you're doing. We have quite a number of questions that have come in. I wanted before we get to those, we had a little two question audience poll. Laura, would you? There it is. We just wanted to know sort of where people fit within the industry, and what they think about the potential long-term viability of alternative finance models to the sort of traditional sell your soul to a record label or a publisher model. So while people are looking that over, let's take a few of these questions.
I mean, could I just add to that, Paul, that of course this fund could be, I'm not saying it will be, but it could be quite disruptive, because it will allow artists to arrange their business structures by buying out existing arrangements. It could help to you know, to move artists to be closer to the consumer. I mean, we are seeing so many ways in which artists can reach an audience now, which 25 years ago simply did not exist. If you didn't go to market on the arms of a record company or a promoter, you know, you wouldn't be in the market. I should also add one other thing, if I may, which is my two partners in crime on this are Alvarium, who's Jack MacDonald, who comes from 23 Capital, has a long history in media finance, and also Tim Smith. Sorry, Tim Clark. I always get his Clark and the two most common names in the UK, and Brown, and I always call him the wrong one. Tim is one of our great managers. He's been a manager all his life. He is founder with David Eindhoven, who unfortunately died, of IE Music. They currently manage and have managed for a long time Robbie Williams and Passenger, and have a very, very respected roster. And he is passionate about artists retaining their rights. So from him, this is as much about making a philosophy become a reality as it is a business interest.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think you know the space for alternative financing models for creators and their partners is only going to get wider with time, and something like this is potentially disruptive to the traditional model, which after all was the traditional financing model grew out of the economics of physical media. That there was a significant, it required significant risk capital to be put up by somebody, because you had to manufacture, store, ship, transport physical goods, and there was
I did it for decades.
Yeah, and
myself, I mean, I ran a record company for many years, and I'm very familiar with the expense, the supply chain expense, the supply chain uncertainty. It was pretty
right. And today you can record an album, a professional sounding album, on an iPhone.
I know you can. You can make a very professional looking film on an iPhone these days
and get it distributed.
That's right. To some of the questions which I've just very quickly scanned, can I suggest that you head over to the website? It's a very simple website. It's www.musiccreditfund.com, and there you will find the answer to some of these questions, including who can borrow and what we will lend against, what income streams we will lend against. Because we'll lend against streaming income, we'll lend against sync, we'll lend against performing maybe rights income from physical, from download. Unfortunately, not from live right now, but that may change. And then you'll be able to see to whom we will lend and against what we will lend.
And the URL there again is what?
It's www.musiccreditfund.com.
So I guess that answers a number of the questions. Who qualifies as a buyer? Only established artists or entities. I guess you will find the answer to that on the website. Or
I mean, you have to either own, but you don't have to actually have them in your pocket. If you have an exclusive license, so say you're a record company, or indeed a distributor, and you have exclusive licenses, then obviously that will be eligible, because you essentially control those rights for a period of time, and the loan will be calculated against the period of time that you essentially control those rights for. Same with an artist. If a major record company owns the rights, but you have an exclusive right to income from those rights, we will lend against that. So you don't have to, in terms of the law, own it. You have to have an exclusive right to earn from it.
Right.
Does that help?
I think so. If that doesn't answer, Todd, your question, you can post again in the Q&A. And have you thought about, I mean, does this have applications outside of the music industry? I mean, there are other creative sectors that, you know, have become largely streaming focused.
Well, look, you know, when I was in the trade association world, I mean, I spent 25 years in the commercial world, and then I spent 20 years in the trade association world as representing the commercial sector. And one of the areas of engagement which I was very involved with was access to finance across the creative industries. I also found a lot of other commonalities between other, you know, film, TV, and so on. But access to finance was a common denominator again for many of those industries. I mean, I sat on steering groups with government, with a lot of very well-known sculptors, producers, magazine owners, and they all told the same story, that even with a successful product, a film, an art show, whatever, if they wanted to do it again, they would have to remortgage their house. It earned them zero credit. And so the answer to your question is probably yes, Paul, but I'm not the person, because I've spent too long in the music industry to pretend to know anything much. I know there is very similar profile across the creative industries, and maybe somebody will come knocking on our door saying, hey, you know, if you want to replicate that over here, we can help you, because we're specialists in the music industry, and that's my role here. I'm on the advisory board. I couldn't really pretend to be on the advisory board of a film finance.
Right. Well, you know, the commonalities between the different verticals, particularly at the sort of finance and business to business level, is sort of the basis of the Rights Tech project. That's what we try to shine a light on, is how you know, solutions developed in one sector might be applicable in
I'm sure
other sectors. And you know, if you look at what's going on in the film, television, video world these days, that, you know, the deal structure is starting to change there. It's starting to evolve into something more like the music industry, in a sense that it's the licenses are, you know, performance based, rather than you know, you have, you know, rights to this movie for, you know, 3 years to broadcast in, you know, this country. It's as that business becomes more streaming dominated, those deals are getting to look more like, you know, the sort of deals that that, you know, Spotify has with the music industry. And so it wouldn't surprise me if at some point you attracted some interest from, or the model at any rate.
I think that's highly likely. And of course, with the proliferation of audiovisual companies, that's again going to boost music revenue, because, you know,
absolutely
music is one of the, you know, we're seeing that now. It's very consistent. It's a very consistent and increasing revenue stream for any rights owner, without a doubt. And if it isn't, it's not being promoted properly, I would suggest.
Okay, we're coming up on time.
Okay.
Laura, if you could put up the poll results. So just wanted to get a sense of the audience. Got a lot of publishing folks out there, not a big surprise, since we're talking about monetization of publishing rights, in part. A lot of agents, managers, attorneys, and only a few folks aren't directly involved in the music industry. So you know, publishing folks and artist representatives seem to be the bulk of the crowd today. And I'm kind of surprised at the answers to this, to the second question about, you know, whether people are confident that that something like your model could become a viable long-term alternative. You know, there's a certain amount of selection bias probably in the people who tuned in to this episode based on the topic, but I'm surprised that there's that much confidence that you know, this could be applied to, you know, almost any artist.
Well, I'm delighted.
Yeah,
I'm delighted. I mean, look, I actually think it's long overdue. I mean, as I said at the beginning of our chat, Paul, you know, we could not get arrested with the finance industry over, you know, decades. The whole industry was a pariah as far as the finance industry was concerned. And that's why I believe fundamentally there is a lack of diversity in funding models. So launching something like this, which is a specialist music fund, it's diversifying the choice that people will make when they come to make decisions about how they want their careers and how they want their businesses to be configured. So that's why I said a little earlier, I think it could be quite disruptive. It will take time. We're in no hurry. You know, we don't have to impress the city. We're not on some sort of quarterly, you know, beauty parade. You know, we will grow this organically, and word is spreading already. So, you know, I think.
And are you still raising money for the fund, or are you?
We have plenty of money. We have private funds in.
Okay. There was an additional question, Samantha Wright, that you might want to direct directly to.
I have just sent her a little note to say if she heads over to the Music Credit Fund, there's an info at, and I get those, so we can hook up there.
Okay. That I think is I'm going to have to wrap it up for today.
Well, thank you ever so much for having me.
We will be returning to this topic in September at the Rights Tech Summit, which will be a 2-day virtual conference in September. And I'm very much hoping that Alison will be able to join us there as well. We're going to have a panel, an entire panel on alternative finance strategies. Mm-hmm. So if you found this interesting today, you can go to rightstechsummit.com and find out more about the upcoming conference. And I don't know if Ned is coming back to join us.
I am right here, Paul.
Hi there.
Hey, Alison, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And Paul, what a great start to season 2. So thank you. We hope, Alison, that you can join the Rights Tech Summit in September. And I've already shared your information with some of my colleagues at Manat on what you're doing with the fund. So it was really interesting to hear about it. And everybody, to all the audience who has been coming to the shows, like Paul said at the start of the show, we're going to take a few weeks off, but we will be back with more shows in early August. So enjoy the early summer, and we'll see you in August. Have a good one.
Thanks,
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.